This is AI Inside, episode 54, recorded Wednesday, February 5th, 2025. 5 years of AI ethics at Adobe. This episode of AI Inside is made possible by our wonderful patrons at patreon.com/AI Inside Show. If you like what you hear, head on over and support us directly, and thank you for making independent podcasting possible. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of AI Inside, the podcast where we take a look at the AI that is layered throughout so much of the world of technology. I am one of your hosts, Jason Howell, joined, as always, by my friend, Jeff Jarvis.
Hey, boss. Jeff? Good to see you.
Good to see you, sir. Yes, very good to see you. I'm really excited for today's show. It's been a while in the making and the crafting. Before we get there, just a real quick shout out, quick thank you to our patrons who enable us to do this show each and every week. That's patreon.com/AI Inside Show. Sven Johnny is one of our patrons supporting our work here. So Sven, thank you so much. And everyone else who contributes, we really do appreciate your efforts behind the scenes. And of course, if you want to subscribe, AIinside.show. Don't forget to do that. Then you won't miss an episode like today. If you happen to miss it live, you'd still get it in podcast form. Today, I want to welcome to the top of the show, we have this guest for probably the next 25 minutes or so, Grace Yee, who is the Senior Director of Ethical Innovation at Adobe. Grace, it is a pleasure and honor to have you on the show today. Thank you for being with us.
It's a pleasure and honor to be on the show with the both of you. I'm so excited to have this conversation.
Yeah, I mean, you know, we're AI Inside for Jeff and I, as we've talked about on the show many times, is it's something that we do because we're constantly learning about artificial intelligence. We aren't of the mind, or at least I'm not of the mind, to know how to get into the models and pull the levers and do all the really nerdy stuff, but I want to know more about it. And the topic that really comes up time and time again on this show has to do with ethics in AI and the build out of that. As a creator, I use Adobe products all the time, so I'm very familiar with, interacting with the tools, with Photoshop and Premiere, and how AI is integrated into the tool set. So that makes me particularly excited to get the chance to talk to you about kind of the development of the AI Ethics Committee, which seems like a really great place to start. This began, I believe, in 2019. And a lot has changed when it comes to artificial intelligence development over the last 5 or 6 years when you started that. So I'm just kind of curious from that perspective, like you've been pretty integral to this. How has that developed, especially in recent years as things have really kind of snowballed in AI?
So Jason, as you said, like we started, we kind of started from the foundation, right? So really having a set of AI ethics principles that we could kind of ground the development and deployment of our AI features. And that started, I think it's 6 years ago now, incredibly. Yeah. And we put together an AI ethics committee, which, is a group of cross-functional employees from Adobe. So we had people from our marketing organization, our legal organization, our development organization, because we really wanted to have that diverse perspective to come up with a set of principles that were simple, concise, practical, and most importantly, like stand the test of time. So we started out, when we put it together, it was just AI, and today it's generative AI. And I am so proud to say that it is the same set of principles that we created back then. And, our principles are accountability, responsibility, and transparency. And accountability is really around making sure we have feedback mechanisms in our products to allow our customers to report concerns and for us to address those concerns. Responsibility is really around a process in place that we can evaluate the AI before it's deployed. And then transparency is really letting our customers know how we're using AI in our products. And so, I think there's pieces of it that's changed, but kind of like those 3 principles that we, hold our AI to has stayed the same. Obviously with generative AI, there's a lot more possibilities. And so we have an ethics assessment that or impact assessment that teams fill out before they kind of go through our AI ethics review process. And that assessment has changed, between AI and generative AI. But the process of identifying harms, evaluating for harms, which is really around testing and measuring, and then mitigating those harms, and then in some cases going back and retesting and remeasuring, that has stayed the same through this 6-year process that we've been in.
Grace, one thing that fascinates me as Jason and I learn on the show is that there's kind of a developing matrix of responsibility. And having written about the history of print, I go back to how the printer was responsible, or the publisher was responsible, or the author was responsible. And in the AI world, there's the foundation model level, there's the application layer, and then there's the user layer. And it seems to me that Adobe is very much in the middle there of enabling applications for users. So my question is this: what can you be responsible for, and what can you possibly not be responsible for? That is to say that Adobe can't possibly anticipate every use that every user could ever put your tools to, and thus prevent anything that anyone may ever consider to be bad, right? That's just impossible. However, in the kind of PR and policy world, you stand the risk of somebody saying, well, they used Adobe for that. So how do you separate out what you as Adobe can legitimately and properly be responsible for, and what you just simply cannot control on either end, from the foundation end or from the user end?
I mean, it's really everyone's responsibility when we use generative AI. So it starts for us, we think about how we train our models. And for our generative AI products and models, we use licensed content from our Adobe stock collection. We also use public domain content whose copyright had expired. So we start there. We think about, before we take that content from Adobe stock and put it into training our models, it goes through a content moderation process to make sure that harmful content is filtered out, or copyrighted material is also filtered out before we go and train that. And then when we actually take those models and we integrate them into our AI features that are part of our products, like, we really sit down and we think about, the technology itself, how it's being used to enable a specific capability. And then we think through, like, who's the audience? Like, what are they doing with this? And we think through, like, obviously, like, the intentional harms, which is, a bad actor is trying to do something bad to the system, and we try to mitigate those. We also think about it from, if someone's just using our models and they're trying to create something and they put in an innocuous prompt, like, we want to make sure that our model doesn't unintentionally generate harm. So it's all of it. And I think, we've always said, like, we'll never get to this 0%, like, all harm has been mitigated, pulled out of the system. And so I think it goes back to our accountability principle, making sure that we have a feedback mechanism in place so that when our customers are using these AI features within our products and they encounter something, they can easily report it to us. And then we look at that feedback, and then we take that and try to make the model better. Because it really is this community of people that we need, even though, for all of our AI features, we do a lot of internal beta testing. So we ask our diverse employee population to help test it, to kind of like understand what harms they're seeing. And we continue to mitigate that before it goes to production. But that's still not enough. Like, people can use AI in these most imaginative ways that we've never thought about. So we need everybody to help. And that's why our feedback mechanism is really important. And then on the other side, for us, responsible innovation is not only about how we develop our products, but it's also about how our products can impact the world. And so, we back in 2019, it's a pivotal year for us, we co-founded the Content Authenticity Initiative, which is now today a global coalition across industries working together to try to bring more transparency to digital content, and really allowing like people, our creators, to show their work. And we do this through a technology called content credentials, which creators can go and choose to put content credentials against their content, so people can see like how the content came to be, what has happened to it along the way, and they can use that information to make their own decision about whether or not to trust it. And we think about it like it's like a nutrition label for content, which is similar to like a nutrition label for food.
Jason?
Yeah, when you talk about community, I think that's a real key component of what I think of when I think of Adobe's products, because they're so, I mean, and probably because I'm so close to it, because I am a big time fan and user of the Creative Cloud tool set. So I'm using Photoshop, I'm using Premiere, I'm using all these tools, interacting with, the AI tools that are integrated in there. And I think what occurs to me around that community is what we've seen, especially in the last couple of years, is that from a creativity perspective, and Adobe's tools are very, much appealing to the creative community, is that there's the people who are super creative, who have talent and ability of using these softwares and services to do what they do, squared up against the fact that the generative AI tools are coming into the tools they're already using. And I think certain parts of that community feel a little threatened by that. I'm really curious to know how Adobe kind of squares up that the inclusion of those kinds of features in the tools against the very creators that sometimes feel like, oh, well, wait a minute, those things are making my efforts obsolete. Which, by the way, I don't agree with. I think that overall, it's just bringing more tools to my palette, and yay, I can do more things with that. But not everybody feels the way that I do about that. I'm curious to know what you think about that.
Adobe has always been creator focused. So if you think about our products like Photoshop and Premiere Pro and Illustrator, I mean, those products have existed before AI, before generative AI. And it's always been about, allowing our creators to express themselves. And, I think creativity is a very human characteristic. And so, we had those tools. And then when generative AI came on, what we're doing is we're integrating those technologies into the features into our products to make it easier for our creators to express themselves. So, prior to generative AI, creators in Photoshop would have to like painstakingly kind of, draw a line around the object or person that they're trying to remove. And you'd be very precise. And today,
I know that pain very, very well. I do that every day. And the tools have made it so easy now. Yeah.
I mean, today it's like you can just draw this circle, and it's a very rough circle. And then, you can prompt it and it'll like remove it or generate something else in place of it, and that's our generative fill feature. And it's one of our most popular generative AI features. So it's really about making it easier. And it frees up their time to be more creative.
Yeah, I agree. I've argued since generative AI came out that it potentially extends literacy in various definitions to people. I can't draw. Now you can help me draw. Other people don't like to write. It can help them write. Right.
Sure.
So I have a course on the books for Stony Brook University to teach next fall on AI and creativity, an undergraduate entry-level course. And it'll be interesting for students to explore the definitions of creativity through this. But I also want to be able to teach them the ethics of creativity and the use of tools. And so you've talked about it from the Adobe end and from the acquisition of content end, and now from the creator end in terms of the professionals and how you deal with them. What about the beginner? What about the student coming to this for the first time? What are the ethical issues that I, as a teacher, should worry about in teaching them?
I think it's really around, I think AI is an enabler, right? And so I think when you use it, you really have to think about, it's really that human oversight. I think it's so important for humans to be involved in the loop. we've seen those stories where, people are just, when they prompt the AI and it generates something and then they just take it and they publish it, they run into issues with it. So I think it's really using it as maybe inspiration or as a helper. And then the output that it generates, like you need to look at it and say, okay, is this, is the output accurate? Is it true? Is it reflecting what I want to say? So you really need to take the ownership and the responsibility of it versus just saying, this is what it generated and this is what I'm going to go and publish against my own name.
Yeah, there's certainly different levels of people and different approaches as far as that's concerned. Some people do see these tools as well, I guess I don't need to do anything. And other people see it as, I think actually the analogy that I remember that I always think of is a friend of ours, Jeff, Mike Elgin, was on the show one time and talked about the analogy of like the moving sidewalk. Like there's people that use artificial intelligence like they stand on a moving sidewalk and they say, I don't have to exert as much effort to get from point A to point B. And then there's the people that get on a moving sidewalk and they walk on it because now I'm getting there faster, more efficiently to the other side. And they really are different perspectives on how these tools are run. Do you ever worry? I'm sure as a company you're concerned about this to some degree, but I'm curious to know what you have to say about kind of the idea of like pushback from, that kind of knee-jerk reaction that some people have to artificial intelligence. They hear AI, they immediately tune out. They immediately say that's bad technology. That's harmful. It's hurting, whatever. And how does that potential pushback impact kind of the brand equity that Adobe has built up over such a long period of time?
So I think it goes back to, we've always been creator focused at Adobe in our products and in our features. And I think it's important to recognize that like AI isn't going to go away. And so that's why it's important to kind of really approach this technology responsibly and make sure that it's developed and deployed responsibly and, respecting our creators' rights. And so, earlier I was talking about, we developed our AI features with that in mind, right? We looked at making sure we're developing our generative AI features with licensed content, content from Adobe Stock Collection, so that creators can use this and feel good about it and not feel like their work is being infringed upon. And so I think it just goes back to really thinking about it ethically from the beginning, from how you train the AI to how we test it and thinking through the harms and then through the deployment of it, and then going back to we continually need to get that feedback to make it better. An example that we had when we first launched Adobe Firefly, our text-to-image model, we were really conservative and we were really concerned about people generating images of people shooting other people or people shooting, or kids shooting each other. And so the first thing we did was we blocked the word shooting. And then we realized that actually that was maybe too aggressive of a move, because the word shooting can be used in the context of I'm shooting a basketball or I'm shooting
a photographer, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And so I think it's just the continual learning and the context is important. And I can tell you that the feedback that we've received from all of our features have really taught us a lot about how our customers are using it and how we really need to sometimes revisit some of the guardrails that we've put into place.
Grace, I'm so glad you're here because there's just so much. Your field is so dynamic, changing constantly. I mean, just this week, the news around ethics and AI and policy. Meta says it put out a statement about not developing certain models. Google took away its statement about not working with weapons. The Copyright Office said that creations, as long as humans are involved, can be copyrighted. The EU has just went into effect with its dangerous AI rules. What I'm curious about is how you follow and keep up on all of this. Is there much connection among the technology companies as you learn how to deal with these issues that come up all anew? Are there specific conferences for AI and ethics people to go to yet? Are there certain academics you think are really doing good work? How do you stay in front of this?
It is a group effort. So we have some amazing teams at Adobe that we work with. We have a policy team that kind of keeps an eye out on all of the different regulations that are happening and forming around the world. There's conferences, as you stated. There's academic papers. A lot of it is news that we read every day. So I think it's just information coming in from all these different sources, and then distilling them and thinking about, which ones make sense, are applicable for the type of AI that Adobe is creating. And so it goes back to, there's some of these amazing, powerful models out there, but it's really around like, how are we taking that model and how are we using it to enable a specific capability within our products. So going back to that, and because we really want to, I think the important thing is we really want to mitigate those practical, real harms that our customers could encounter, and thinking about that during the development and the process, and getting those mitigated so that when those features appear in our products and our customers are using them, it's safer for them. And then, again, just like continuing to learn through our community and making our models better from that perspective.
So on LinkedIn, one of our viewers, Wanda Jacobson, thank you, Wanda, asks whether Adobe is participating in any AI global ethical standard conversations and discussions. Are those going on, or is it possible to imagine global standards, or is it so specific to each company and its applications?
We are participating in conversations all over the world with governments around laws and legislation. We are active in the EU community around the AI code of practice. And I think the important thing is really around the harmonization of all this. I think that will help, especially for global companies selling AI products all around the world. I think that will just make it allow companies to be more innovative, but also being able to develop like safer products for everyone to use.
Thank you. Jason, you're muted.
My apologies. The red button was not on. We have a lot of people watching the live stream who are fans of AI, including
Adobe.
Rosner Design, who says Adobe Photoshop AI is the best. It's amazing. Been going off in the comments. And that's part of the reason why we jumped at the chance to bring you on. I feel like when it comes to a lot of the artificial intelligence products that are out there, some of them I feel like have to really kind of jump through hoops to kind of prove what they're useful for to a wide range of people. And some do better job at that than others. But I feel like Adobe really does because when I think about technology enabling people to do even more interesting and better things in what they do on a daily basis, Photoshop minus all of the artificial intelligence has always been kind of a good example of that. Just got this new tool, integrated into Photoshop, and now it makes that thing that used to take you 20 minutes, it takes like 5 seconds. And no one saw a problem with that. But then, and now with AI, it's doing that on a wider scale. And if you kind of buy into that tool set and those capabilities, it really does improve things. I think it has the potential to really impact, professionals' lives and how they work. And I think you guys are doing a great job.
Thank you. I completely agree. I think it really is an enabler. It helps, I think especially in our creative products, it's helping our creators be, really kind of think through like their creativity and how to express it versus trying to worry about, like we were saying earlier, trying to create that perfect outline around that person or object that you're trying to remove. So you can do it really quickly. It allows you to iterate. You're like, I'm going to get rid of this particular object and replace it with something else. Oh no, it doesn't look, that's not exactly what I want. So here's another idea. I use it a lot to just ideate, and I'm not creative at all. And just seeing what other people have done. And I'm like, oh, this is something that that I think is what I'm trying to do, but then I can go and use that as a foundation, and then, and then just continue to build on it until I get to something I'm like, oh, I actually can do this. And and the amazing thing is, I get to create art or an image or a picture that I feel really good about.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an enabler. I like the way you put that. Grace, really a wonderful pleasure to get you on today. Thank you for carving out some time for Jeff and I and the AI Inside audience. Grace, of course, Grace Yee, Senior Director of Ethical Innovation at Adobe. It's great to have you here.
Thank you, Grace.
Again.
Great to have you. Very great to have this. Thank you so much, Jeff.
We'll look for opportunities as Adobe kind of broadens the scope on what y'all are doing in AI. We'll reach back out and have you back.
All right.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
All right. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye. Fantastic. And people in the live stream chat are kind of going off right now.
Yeah, welcome everybody.
Good to see you all. Thank you, Daniel. I agree. Great interview. After the quick break, we are going to talk a little bit about what you you brought up during the interview there. The Meta's moves around its frontier AI framework, Google's removal of pretty important text from its own public AI principles. We have a lot more coming up, so stay tuned. All right. When I was, you had put in a lot of really wonderful stories. And so I had some great stuff to pick from. And we have a little more than we would normally put in, but that was just because, oh my goodness, how do you even pick? This has been a big week in AI.
It's a big news week. Yeah.
Yeah, big news week. There's a lot happening in the world if you haven't been paying attention, and much of it impacting directly the development of AI. So let's dive into it. Meta recently vowed to create open source AGI for the masses, and a few short weeks later, Meta is developing the Frontier AI framework to tame risks within that development. It's a multi-risk system. So, high risk would be cybersecurity breaches, chemical or biological attacks, limited internal access, restricting release, that sort of stuff. Critical risk would be these possibly catastrophic events, which would lead to, absolutely halted development, ensuring control over leaks and everything. And I think that's probably, I don't know, I'm curious to know what you think about this, but from the open source model perspective, which we know that Meta operates, this is kind of the thing that some people point to and go, this is why you don't need open source, because it enables all these things. And maybe it's enabled anyways without it, but I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I've said a long time, I think it's a fool's errand to think that you can anticipate every bad use, as I said a minute ago, and thus prevent it. And open source opens up more competition, more transparency. Granted, let's caveat again, it's open-ish, not open source fully.
Yeah.
But open development allows universities to work with it and small companies and startups to work with it. And so I think that it's well worth it. And the presumption that it negates the guardrails presumes that the guardrails could be effective anyway. And so Meta's out here saying, well, we're gonna anticipate and evaluate and mitigate and decide and get rid of things in their little charts. And fine, they should, but we shouldn't fool ourselves to think that this is foolproof, that any possible bad use could be eliminated. It can't be. It just simply can't be. And I think that's okay. That's what we have to deal with. Well, the problems here are not going to be made by the machines. The problems are going to be made by bad actors. And yes, I know, folks, this gets to a guns don't kill people, people kill people, or people, all that whole argument.
Right.
Yes, it's a tool. It's a tool that can be misused. And yes, you might want to consider some limitations, but it's a general tool, not a tool used to cause damage in bodies. It's a general tool that can do all kinds of good things and a few bad things. And that means we're going to have to deal with the possibility of the bad things to get all the good things.
Yeah.
And so I'm glad Meta's doing this. This is fine, but we shouldn't think that this is going to be some cure-all, or that they can be held to account for everything that is done with their especially open tools once they're out in the world and down the line, because they can't control them anymore. You just can't.
Yeah. I think for me, that's the important takeaway that I have is to ensure that, like, I know for me, I appreciate that companies are doing this, and I have a measured kind of understanding
well said.
around what it actually means in the grand scheme of things. It doesn't even if it does promise, it will not deliver on eradicating or eliminating any possible bad thing that happens. But I want them to do that because I think it's better to have that than to not have that.
Yeah. The problem, Jason, I think is going to be that I want, in my book, The Web We Weave, I argue that we all should be making covenants of mutual obligation to be held to account for what we do. And I believe that strongly, that from the user end up through the highest technology end, and government as well, and media. The problem is that once you make some warrant, you then become liable for it. Mm-hmm. And you become liable when it comes to, let's say, the Federal Trade Commission. It doesn't tell you how to make toothpaste, but if you said your toothpaste would make your teeth shine brighter than a light bulb and attract mates for you at every corner, then they can be taken to court for not meeting that.
Not delivering.
Exactly. And so I can recognize the policy and legal and these companies are cautious. On the one hand, they want to say, we're going to try our best, but they're going to be careful how they say it so that they don't get held to account for something they couldn't be held accountable for. Or perhaps they should say more and should be more accountable, but all that fear holds them back from doing so. So it's a dance.
Yeah, indeed. Definitely a dance. Meanwhile, also part of the dance is Google, as you had mentioned earlier, removing important text, I would say, from its AI principles that had pledged to avoid using its AI tech for harmful applications, things like weapons. And according to Bloomberg, let's see here, it was a section called Applications We Will Not Pursue. That was apparently there a week ago. Now it's disappeared. And Google actually pointed TechCrunch to a new blog post on its site, Responsible AI, our 2024 report and ongoing work, where it notes Google's belief that, quote, companies, governments, and organizations sharing these values should work together to create AI that protects people, promotes global growth, and supports national security. But yeah, still the removal of the text. I mean, the thing that came to mind with me is, and it's the easy punching bag response to something like this when it comes to Google, which is don't be evil. It's easy to see that and be like, well, that's
define evil.
Well, that's true. Right.
Well, it'll be interesting to see what the reaction is inside the company, because this came in great measure because a couple of years ago, employees protested against Project Nimbus, a cloud computing operation with the Israeli government. That certainly is on the news right now. And as I remember, this was part of the reason I think that Google offloaded its robotics arm, because of the fear that the robots could be used as weaponized drones, grounded or otherwise. And so the employees caused that to happen. Their protest was so strong. Whether that culture still exists in Google today, and whether Google has a culture to listen to protest if it exists, will be fascinating to watch. But yeah, I think this is an important change to monitor.
Indeed. Yeah. And I think what comes to mind as I hear you kind of set those examples that I definitely remember, from not that long ago, is has the world changed? I mean, I know it's changed so quickly, so rapidly, and so extremely, but have those changes changed certain people's feelings about what that meant then versus what that means now? In other words, are you know what I mean? Are people were so disrupted by that idea then? Are we in a different time in a very short period of time where people are less or have kind of given up?
They've either given up or there's so many other things to have to pay attention to right now.
I mean, it's exactly right.
And I think this is going political in a way that we don't on this show particularly, because it's not relevant, though this is what we're talking about right now is political. But it's interesting just to look at general in the United States now. There is very little protest. There's very little loud talk. In Germany, hundreds of thousands of people at a time are coming out weekend after weekend to protest, and they have an election going on, and that has a factor too. But there's huge protest going on there, and none here. So is that a change in are we numbed? Are we brought down? Have our attitudes changed? Have our ideas changed? I don't know.
Yeah, and how will that impact the kind of development of this type of approach to AI.
And certainly the politics at the top
what gets
of Silicon
through
Valley
during that
has changed.
numbness,
Yes, exactly. Yep.
Yeah, interesting. OpenAI released a new research agent tool called Deep Research, the deepest of research, which
I think, by the way, just one quick second, I think that's almost a direct answer to DeepSeek, and I think it's called Deep Think or Deep Reasoning. And so it's really interesting to see how parallel the two are becoming.
Yeah, indeed. Well, and yes, and actually, I think even Altman has, kind of commented in recent weeks needing to up the timetable for their releases and kind of speed things through. I think as
competition
a result of DeepSeek and all that. That's what competition will do for you. But deep research can essentially go out onto the open web. It can pull back information sources on a topic. It can create reports on that information. It can also do recursive searching. So it'll search and it'll find kind of breadcrumb trail leading somewhere else. And so that it'll kind of lead down that road to the related searches and then make sense of all of that information it finds and put it into a report depending on how you tell it to. And right now, this is a feature for pro users, pro members, so that's $200 a month. But they do have plans to release this on the lower tiers, so Plus and Teams. Don't know when, but they say sometime down the line. OpenAI is touting this as a research process that might take a human 30 minutes to 30 days, takes deep research only 5 to 30 minutes, depending on the complexity. There you go.
Waiting 30 minutes for AI is interesting.
Yeah, well, I know. And so when I heard that, we're so used to just a couple of seconds. But then I hear that and I wonder if A, maybe it actually does take that amount of time. But B, does that tell me, curious AI-minded individual, oh, then this must really be doing some work.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
This is like those other things that just funnel out garbage. This
It's performative.
thing's really taking its time because it wants to get it right. Maybe that incurs more trust along the way as a result. But I don't know. I'm curious to use the tool. I didn't realize at first that it was $200 a month. It was only for the pro members at first. And
folks, if you want Jason to learn how to use this, we're going to need a lot more members coming in. A lot more members to make $200 a month.
So speaking of that, let's see here if I can open up my Discord here, because Dr. Do here, I'm trying to vamp while I use the StreamYard interface to open up what I want to show you. Okay. So Dr. Do in the StreamYard. So if you are a member of the Patreon, patreon.com/AI Inside Show, you get access to a Discord. And we're starting to kind of get some movement in the Discord, which is awesome. Some conversations and stuff. And of course, Dr. Do is one of the executive producers of this show. So thank you, Doc. But Dr. Do used this tool because Dr. has access to the $200 a month plan, I suppose, to do research on me and basically go through my internet history to pull back, my podcast career and appearance history, and to complete an IMDb style table of all the things that I've done, include as many guest appearances on other shows, not just one.
Don't forget all your Oscars and Grammys in there, Dr.
Exactly. And came back with this really nice, I was reading through it. It's multiple pages. This show's Buzz Out Loud. This show's Tech News Today at Twit, all about Android. And there's a number of these pages, all formatted into a nice table. And I was actually pretty impressed. I was like, wow, this thing
was it accurate?
Really, I mean, yeah, mostly. I mean, I think if I really scrutinized some of the details, I would find some differences. Some of the dates on these things, I don't think are purely accurate. But I mean, Tech News Weekly, 2017 to 2023. Yeah, that's spot on. Although Tech News Weekly is still going on, so I don't know why it put the 2023. I guess my departure in
maybe that's what it is. Yeah,
that's what it's referring to. So that would be.
Yeah.
So, anyways, so we don't have access to the tool, but some of our patrons do.
And by the way, folks, if you ever want to show us the fruits of your AI experimentation, please do let us see it.
Yeah, love it.
Thank you, Dr. Do.
Thank you, Dr. Do. Great to have you with us and supporting us as you do, as you, Doctor, do. Sorry, I couldn't help that. OpenAI responding quickly to, as we mentioned earlier, to the DeepSeek dissent by issuing its O3 Mini, which is its first reasoning model. They're doing that free of charge. So this is another example of how OpenAI is really trying to just kind of like push things out a little bit faster. And this is the smaller model. The full O3 model hasn't yet been released, but yeah. So this is out as well. I haven't really used it, so I don't really know a whole lot about it. But is it OpenAI's first reasoning model? Is that the?
I think so. I think that's what it is. It's. I think that this is all DeepSeek causing a kind of panic. Yeah. DeepSeek / Meta causing a panic of having to get stuff out there, because otherwise, if they're too much behind paywalls, don't we know in media, they get lost.
Yep.
And this is related. This is not on the rundown, but who was it? Jesse, what's your name? Jesse Scott told us in the chat earlier on that the new Gemini 2.0 model is out and released for everybody today. It's at the bottom of the rundown, Jason. Yeah, so this is a little breaking news here. And so you have leapfrog going on with all these models coming out. It's almost impossible and free and open. That we don't all have to be Dr. Do with this special access. We can try a lot of these things. And, when I think about teaching students, I've mentioned on the show a couple times, to be able to have all this available for students for free is just amazing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So we'll see what this looks like.
It really is. It makes me wonder what the paid models of 2 to 5 years from now, like what that looks like, because so much is happening free. I mean, often with these things, like with O3 Mini, for example, it's not free and clear entirely, right? Like you get a certain amount free. If you're on one of the paid subscriptions, once the full model rolls out, then you'll get full unfettered access, essentially. So there are some limitations, but it is really cool how everybody has access to at least use it and start to kind of determine why they use this for that, or which ones they have the strong preference for, so that they can maybe eventually pay for the one that they're going to use all the time, whatever that may be.
Yeah, it's going to be really hard to figure out what the market is.
Yeah.
So today, by the way, is the day we switch This Week in Google to become intelligent machines over on the Twit network. And the guest they have on today is a former go-to-market guy for OpenAI. And he left like a year and a half ago. And I can't imagine what the change is in the sense of what a market is. Who's our customer? What will they pay? For what? What's the value? It just changes constantly.
Constantly. I mean, even being on the inside, it has to be hard to keep up, let alone on the outside trying to keep up. Well, that's cool. So today's the day of the
switch.
The relaunch. I don't know if it's a relaunch, but
it's a rename. Yeah, basically so they can get ads. So folks, we're not really in competition. We kind of do things differently in both shows. And this is my main AI show. And we'll talk about anything over there. But it'll be interesting to see what I can learn across both.
Yeah. Cool. Excellent. Well, so if people want to go to subscribe, do they still go to twit.tv/twig, TWIG?
I don't know.
Do they go IM or Intelligent Machines?
I don't know.
Just do a search for Intelligent Machines
you'll find
and Twit, and I'm sure
you'll find it. But I don't want to, I'm not, be loyal here. Yes.
Hey,
the great thing is that Jason and Leo and Lisa are such friends that there's really no competition. Leo has made absolutely clear he doesn't want to compete with this show. But we'll all learn more about AI together. Yeah,
I have no qualms whatsoever. I'm honestly, because I produced Twig for as long as I did behind the scenes, for so long that show wasn't just about this week. It wasn't just about Google. It was about all sorts of things. So I think the name change and kind of approach is kind of long overdue. It's about time. It needed it. So cool. Congratulations.
So I'll learn some stuff there. Awesome. Yep.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. Let us know how that goes. And everybody should check that out this week. AI coming to Washington, and Thomas Shedd, who is the Technology Transformation Services Director, also a close ally to Elon Musk, is making that happen with a, quote, AI first strategy, according to Wired sources. So interesting to me how it was not that long ago that AI was, the thing to fear. And yet now suddenly it's AI first. Like, let's just go for it. Let's centralize our databases for AI analysis. Let's develop AI coding agents for all agencies. Let's automate our internal government tasks with AI. Workforce reductions are imminent, apparently. All the impacts coming at you as everything else is right now.
But it's okay if government is behind the times. These are critical mission things. Does grandma get her Social Security check? Do we know what products have been recalled? Are we analyzing a tragic plane crash in Washington properly? I don't trust AI with those tasks, and I don't think we need to at this point. Government is behind the times. It should be behind the times. So I think to try to drag it into this future for the sake of technological macho is going to be dangerous. Bad things are going to happen.
Yeah, well, that's the feeling that I get too, is that if you rush change everything on a dime the way it kind of seems like it is right now, that especially with the technology that is still very, kind of uncertain,
unreliable,
unreliable.
Yeah.
You don't truly know what you're going to get. It just kind of get the feeling that there's a certain contingency of people that are like, yeah, bring it on. Like, okay, we don't know, and we'll see what happens. It's like, oh my God, we'll see what happens indeed.
Yeah. So you have on the one hand that idea that we've got to change everything and bring AI in, and AI, as you just said, Jason, is true. It wasn't that long ago that AI was seen as risky and dangerous. Now it's the future. But then, as our next story says, it's still seen as risky and dangerous.
Yeah, right? Yes, it's like one hand doesn't know what the other, whatever that saying is. You know what I mean. Use DeepSeek in the United States, go to jail, or at least pay fines, one or the other. And no, this is not law yet. DeepSeek is not named specifically, but it sure is alluded to. It's a bill that's been filed by Senator Josh Howley to, quote, prohibit United States persons from advancing artificial intelligence capabilities within the People's Republic of China and for other persons, essentially to prevent the import of technology or IP made in China is another aspect of it. And those violations would result, or could result, if this were to actually go through. I'd kind of be surprised if it goes through, but
I don't think it'll go through. I think Hawley does a lot of show-off legislation like this of, oh my God, this is terrible, and I'm going to protect you from it. When sometimes I want protection from him, and so no, I think it's performative. No, what we've seen with DeepSeek, of course, is a lot of governments, including the Pentagon, have said that it's not allowed within government. Yeah. I think Australia, New Zealand,
same as TikTok, right?
Yep. Okay, fine, all right. Though I still think there's use for these things, but we shall see.
For sure. It just seems like a similar playbook of like, oh, well, we did that with TikTok. Now the new boogeyman is DeepSeek, so let's do that with DeepSeek too. And 20 years in prison, potentially, $1 million per individual, $100 million per business. I mean, that's no small. Yeah. No,
you remember back in the day when taking MP3s was seen as criminal, and people were, your teenager was going to get you bankrupted because he was downloading songs. Well, now your teenager is going to get you bankrupted and in jail because she's downloading DeepSeek.
Yeah, right. Oh man, that just reminds me of when I was a kid. My dad would rent a Betamax machine from the video store. No, he'd rent a VHS from the video store and movies on VHS, and then bring it home and connect it to his Betamax that he had connected. And so every weekend it was like, well, we're just recording new movies for our library. And every time he'd do that, I'd see the FBI warning at the beginning. And I was too young to know, like, how the heck is the FBI going to know that you're doing that? But in my mind, I was like, Dad's like really like putting us out on a limb here. I hope we don't get caught. It was
outlaw Dad.
I know, totally. But I tell you what, when friends came over, they knew we had all the best movies. So that. All on recorded Betamax. May it rest in peace. All right, let's take a quick break and then round out the show with a few other news stories. So many great stories to talk about. We got a few more coming up in a second. All right, Anthropic showed off a new defense system. Lots of defense kind of stories today, I suppose. This system is meant to target jailbreak attacks on LLMs. And I guess my understanding there is, we talk about guardrails all the time. There are always really, and Grace actually alluded to this, there are always really interesting, unique, and unexpected ways that people use these systems that when you're designing them, you don't know that people are going to go in that direction. And if they do, sometimes these systems respond to them in ways that they are prohibited from doing just because you've worded it differently. You somehow got around it in one way, shape, or form. And I think that's probably always going to be there to some degree, but Anthropic has created a filter on input and output. It scans for potential attempts to circumvent restrictions. So people who are, geared or directing them, their efforts at getting around these restrictions. It tested it with 183 users in a bug bounty program. 10,000 jailbreak prompts were analyzed in the process. The results, it got some results. It dropped successful attacks dropped from 86% to 4.4%. So it's a big drop.
Yeah.
Can't expect 0%. You can't expect that, but that's still something.
We saw kvetching about this, that it's Anthropic making the public and the users do their work for them. Okay, that's a fairly standard complaint. But what strikes me about this one, Jason, as I was thinking about it, is, okay, what your so-called guardrails are, and so you can look and see whether or not they were evaded. The problem is not that. The problem is the guardrails you didn't anticipate.
Yes.
And so it's not so much a jailbreak, it's an unanticipated use that's going to get you in trouble in PR or policy. And there's no way to measure that because you don't know what it is.
You don't know what it is
until it's happened.
Where it's coming from or what it will be or anything.
Yep. Until it's too late.
Until it's too late. Interesting. But there are people out there that spend their time, it's their funsies is to try and get these things to do the worst of the worst, just to kind of prove, just to kind of show like, and see, even Gemini is not safe, or even, Claude's not safe, So
I think red teaming is a fine thing to do. But it's just we can't lull ourselves into thinking that that's going to solve every problem in humanity.
Yeah, that's going to do it all. Yeah. And then finally, I thought we'd end the show with a few notable names in artificial intelligence and their vision of what the future holds. We can start off with Stephen Fry, Demis Hassabis. I still never know how to pronounce his last name. Hassabis, I think. And more than 100 other experts releasing 5 principles for responsible research into AI consciousness. So, understanding AI consciousness to prevent mistreatment and suffering, that's 1. Constraints and safeguards, make sure that those are in place in some way, shape, or form, that's 2. Gradual progress, moving slowly with expert involvement, so not moving too fast, in other words. Balance transparency with safety, that's the 4th. And then careful communication, so avoiding overconfidence in claims about consciousness, which I feel like, wow, the train has left the station on that one. Acknowledging uncertainties, transparency about the risks, that sort of stuff. So
2 things here. 1, I'm not sure that Demis Hassabis, or however you say it, signed this letter. I think the Guardian kind of screwed that up with the wrong photo on.
Okay.
Because I don't find his name on the signatories. Just for the record.
Interesting. Okay.
Now, this was a big eye roll for me.
Okay.
Because the way the headline of The Guardian puts it is AI systems could be caused to suffer if consciousness is achieved. There's so much truly human suffering in the world. Hurting software's feelings is the last thing on my mind.
Yeah.
It's a machine. It's not even a full machine. It's just a program. It's just an algorithm in there. It has no feelings. It has no consciousness. Yes, it would be good not to have a culture in which we want to insult the thing because it can't be insulted. But I think it's ridiculous, and it's getting way ahead of ourselves to presume that it has consciousness. Ergo, you better not hurt its feelings. You better be nice to it. Where are we?
Are you saying thank you to your LLM?
I actually do say please.
Yeah.
Because it's
sometimes do, too.
reflexive. Oh, I say it all the
Yeah.
time. But this is absurd. This is just absurd. And it's from an organization called Consium that was started in great measure, evidently, by a guy at an ad agency. I don't get this, WPP. So yeah, I rolled my eyes big time at this. I thought it was kind of ridiculous. But that's why I put it in there, so I could roll my eyes here on the show.
There you go. I feel like I heard the resistance of your eyeball against your eyelashes when you just rolled it. I could hear it through the microphone. These mics are really good. And then another that I thought was kind of unrelated, but also kind of good to throw in here, just from the from the perspective of big notable names in AI saying things about the future of AI. Meta's Yann LeCun, one of the godfathers of modern AI, as he is well known for, says the next major leap for the technology of artificial intelligence will happen by the end of the decade. Says current systems are too limited, and I think really what he's talking about seems to be about understanding of the world.
Exactly.
Can't do things like domesticated robots, can't do things like fully automated cars, because AI currently has a very hard time interacting and understanding the physical world, which is something that us humans, comes very naturally, because from the day that we're born, we're learning that language. And for AI, apparently, building systems that understand the world is a big challenge. It sounds like LeCun is saying, and he says, quote, "We're not talking about matching the level of humans yet. If we get a system that is as smart as a cat or a rat, that would be a victory." So that's where we're at right now.
I'm a big fan of Yann LeCun because I think that he is among the most realistic here. You don't hear him talking
measured. Yes.
Yeah, he really is. You don't hear him talking about AGI and superintelligence and destroying the earth and all this stuff. I think he's tied to reality and what AI can and can't do. He compares it to the intelligence of a cat often. Then we can argue whether a cat, a dog, or a rat is the better comparison. But he's absolutely right here that AI has no sense of reality. That's why you get six fingers. As I think we said on the show the other week, if a video shows a ball going off a table, AI doesn't know that it persists in reality. Right. Yep. The ball is gone. There is no ball. It never was, right? And so how do you teach AI what a 3-year-old, this is what Jan also talks about often, how does a 3-year-old learn the world? The amount of data that a 3-year-old takes in to get the understanding that a 3-year-old has is beyond anything that is taught to an AI. It's a huge task to get AI to the level maybe of a toddler or a cat. Mm-hmm. And we're not there. And so I think this is a point of realism. But what I like about what he says here too is that this is talking about what's the next leap we're going to need here. And I think that's we have a lot of argument now that it's reasoning, but I think he's right. I think it's reality. And unless it can get some sense of it has a good sense of our language, it has a good sense of
very good sense of language.
Yeah. So that worked. Can there be training such that it gets that kind of reality? And we talked about this with Jensen Huang about the shadow AI existences, the digital twin. Thank you. Sorry, I forgot that. Okay. The digital twins created, and how they trained some automobile AI on thousands upon thousands upon thousands of hours of video, and then in turn had to make up more synthetic data to try to give it that sense. The task of training on reality is really, really hard. But we'll see. I think that it's a tangible goal, far more tangible than artificial general intelligence.
Well, and is what he's alluding to here that, like, in order to get to AGI, this needs to happen, and so
I don't think he's even putting that on his timeline.
Yeah,
I think that he's more realistic than that. I think he's trying to say that if we want, because I think he's putting it the right way. If you want a robot or a car to operate properly in our physical world, then it has to have a better understanding of that physical world. It's straightforward.
Full stop.
And I think that's why I like him so much, because that kind of expression is tangible.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Totally agree. Totally agree. I like hearing that too. But and by the way, this happened because LeCun was one of 7 engineers who were awarded the Queen Elizabeth Prize for engineering, and so he was on stage talking.
And he's off to a big conference in Paris, I think next week, that I wish I could have got invited to because, hey, it's Paris. There's a big AI conference happening. I think it's next week. Yes, Monday, Tuesday, the French AI Action Summit.
Oh.
And so there'll be a lot of important people there. Some people I know who got invited and I didn't. And
hopefully they're listening right now so they can like.
Well, let's ask Jeff over. So years ago, I went to a EG8. Sarkozy in the early days of the internet had a whole bunch of people in a huge tent on the Tuileries about the internet and what's happening. And I got to question Sarkozy, and it was kind of a blast. But I think these are the kinds of discussions that we need to see at this high level. What are they? Are they being smart? Are they being stupid? We'll see what comes out. Is this going to be AGI talk or is this going to be cat talk?
Right, right.
So we shall see.
Yeah, we shall. Well, thank you again to our guest, Grace Yee from Adobe. It was a fantastic conversation. Really enjoyed having Grace on. And thank you, Jeff. Always appreciate hanging out with you. An hour every week. I love it. JeffJarvis.com for everything that you've got, book-wise especially, The Web We Weave, Gutenberg Parenthesis, magazine, everything's there. That's the place.
Thank you, Jason.
Go, including a link to Blue Sky with a little butterfly. Just now saw that. Thank you for that. Everything that you all need to know about this show can be found at our web or a place on the web. I was going to say web page, and for some reason that just sounded so archaic, even though it's accurate. Our web page on the World Wide Web.
Jason, do we have a homepage? I've heard that one should have a homepage.
Homepage. Oh my goodness. Yes.
It's www. Or no, it's worse. It's worse. It's HTTP. No less than /
And then is it / or backslash?
Backslash. Yeah.
Right.
We're old enough to remember the backslash.
Totally. AIinside.show. That's really all you need to know. That's the page that has all of our information, has a way to subscribe and everything. Big button right here. Just subscribe to it. Or you can go to patreon.com/AIinsideShow. Become one of our patrons who support us doing the show each and every week. Something that we just highly appreciate. You get ad-free shows. You get the Discord community that I mentioned earlier that has some really great conversations happening. You get an AI Inside t-shirt if you become an executive producer like Dr. Do, who had sent in that example via the Discord. Also, Jeffrey Maricini, WPVM 103.7 in Asheville, North Carolina, and Dante St. James, our most recent executive producer. So thank you all for enabling us to do this show. We couldn't do it without you. Yeah. And as for everyone, thank you for being here. We will see you next Wednesday on it. I think so. Anyways, I'm looking at my whiteboard calendar. Yes, we are good. We will see.
Jason's had a little talent. Jason and I both need AI to solve our calendar problems.
Oh, geez. No, because I figured it out. It's a whiteboard calendar. That's what works for me. Period. End of story. Thank you again, everybody. We'll see you next time on AI Inside. Bye, y'all.